Good morning, and thank you for having us. Thank you, the Chelsea Design Centre and London Design Week. And so here we are today with my dear friend, Natasha Fraser. I think I might have to introduce myself. I'm so sorry. I'm Martina Mondadori. I'm the editor-in-chief of Cabana magazine. And the co-author of this new book on Yves Saint Laurent, the Lexicon, the ABC on Yves Saint Laurent. And Natasha, who is a contributor of Cabana, renowned author, and really the expert on Saint Laurent, much more than I am. If my the real author of this book, Stéphane Janson, was here today, he would definitely be the sort of big expert, having also worked with Yves. But Natasha, thank you so much for being here today and talking of what I know is one of your also favorite subjects, Yves.
No, I mean, it's wonderful being here, and I love your book. And I think I'd like to correct you on one thing, dear Martina, is everyone is an expert on Yves, because I think if you're moved by Yves, you become your own personal expert. I think what was fantastic about Yves Saint Laurent is how he moved everyone in an individual way. And that's why
he is, yes, in all his charm, and wasn't he handsome too? Surrounded in one of his interiors, because it must be said, we know we're talking to a sort of interiors audience. He was always obviously passionate about interiors, about objects. He obviously was a big collector with Pierre Berger, and some of his, I mean, again, I think you used the right word. I think whatever Yves did, Yves Saint Laurent, whether his collections, whether his designs for the stage, for theater, whether his houses, his interiors, they moved you. I think they moved, and as you say, if that moves you, then you kind of want to dive into his world. And what this book wants to be, it has no pretension of being a book by experts on Saint Laurent. There are many books out there on him. It's just really like a walk into his world, a very light one, but filled with colors and elements of, it's like one big mood board, or that's what it wants to be.
It totally is. And I think we have to say, Saint Laurent, having done various books linked to him and the Vogue book on Saint Laurent, what is wonderful about your book is you really feel Yves. I mean, if you met, I had the luck of meeting him several times, and he was such a seducer. You felt so seduced by him, and also very touched by him. So much has been written how he was born with a nervous breakdown. But the fact is, Saint Laurent, having been the apple of his mother, Lucienne's eyes, was really so confident in his way with women. And I think we feel that with this wonderful book, and we feel that with the clothes. He knew how to touch women. And certainly when the image we've just seen, there he is with the Lalande sheep, and there he is, everything was a continuation of his world. Yeah. I think everything was beautiful.
And I think it was also so authentic at the time, whatever he felt, maybe a different, he was inspired, as we know, from so many different things and had various moments. Obviously art was always so important. If we think about one of his first creations, with Mondrian being so strong, such a strong influence. And then going from that to a completely ornamental kind of Moroccan, Russian, Chinese inspiration. And yet, as you say, the common thread to all that is, I think, he knew women, and he knew what we want. And that's what I think, I was told recently that all these big kind of secondhand and vintage websites that have replaced the single vintage shops around the world, he is by far the best-selling brand, vintage brand, and especially all his creations from the 1970s are the best-selling brand for and best-selling pieces. From the moment they come, they go.
Yes.
And we're both wearing two vintage pieces filled with color and pattern. And yes, and I think there's an image in the book which we might see on screen now.
Yes.
Yes, which wants to be a collage of all these. It's in the chapter, in the E chapter, because it is an ABC, and it is in the chapter, the E chapter for exoticism, and how all these different countries and cultures inspired different moments in his career. But I think it was really what I meant at the beginning was it was authentically inspired. He kind of delved into that culture through books, films, probably. But he was, in fact, an armchair traveler, wasn't he, Natasha?
Yes, he was. I mean, he was, but that was what was so extraordinary about him. He almost took the best elements. He was inspired by Russia, and he took, he just felt it, that there was this mood for Russia. And then he was inspired by Spain, he thought Carmen. And he just sort of took those colors, and what he sort of focused on, it was, he turned everything into Yves, but using with the backdrop, using these countries. And as you say, the chapter on exoticism. And you see, the great colorist, what an incredible colorist. You see the colors and the headdresses. And I mean, just look at these silks, the Bonnard, inspired by Bonnard, but just the colors.
Yes.
And how you sort of, you look at these and you sort of want to touch them. That was it was so tactile. And
yes.
And wonderful sort of sleeves and
so feminine, right? I mean, anything you wear by Saint Laurent, besides the sort of tailoring, which is always perfect, he makes you feel so, like a real woman. And we'll get to that later. You said I know you, because you wrote this, that he would make any woman feel good with his clothes, and they would look good as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to my mind, what makes Saint Laurent the great is every type of woman looked incredible in his clothes. They could be tall and skinny, they could be short and tight. I mean, they could be short and round. I mean, his fashion house definitely attested to that. They were all very different. There was tiny snake hip Lula de la Falaise, but there were also others, but they all looked incredible in his clothes. He just knew shapes, just as he knew colors, and he knew, how to, we see this wonderful drawing, but he knew exactly what to emphasize, the sort of cuts and, the form of the fall of the sleeves, everything. And that was extraordinary, really.
So this is a very, I think, important image, because again, yes, two wonderful creations, but they are clearly inspired by Morocco, which played such an important role in his not only career but in his life. I mean, I'm sure probably our audience has been to Morocco, to Marrakesh, and visited Majorelle, which is also now the place where the museum is. His house, the garden, and later in life also Tangier, because there was Marrakesh first, and then Tangier always with Pierre Berger. And I remember being the first time I visited the museum there. I remember there's a beautiful black room with quotes on the walls appearing, and how he said, "I discovered color when I arrived in Marrakesh." And I think that, if maybe we can bring back that image from the kind of Morocco-inspired collections. But the thing is, and that's true, I think, of every country he was inspired by. he would get, there were clearly a Russian collection or a Chinese collection, Morocco very often, or sometimes even Romanian blouses, sort of Eastern European. But he would always then make them not feel like a carnival, like a kind of copy of. They would feel kind of Parisian or kind of, you know, turned into a real dress for the kind of cosmopolitan women that he was dressing. Don't you think? I mean, it's
totally. He really, everything, every idea taken from, I don't know, Morocco or the colors or Matisse,
yes.
he turned it into Yves. And by turning it into Yves, because he was such an authentic, certainly in his heyday, so authentic, you know, by turning it to Yves, it, you know, turned into this must-have wardrobe for his clients. And just as he did that with interiors, you know, you look at everything, you look at his taste, whether it was in Morocco or it was in Paris, and you felt that everything was handpicked. It was his love of beauty. I think that was the thing. It was sort of breathtaking. Just as he gave beauty, he was inspired by beauty.
And it was a world, because even when you look at the different interior, the different houses he had, and he did with Berger and with the help of other people, but Chateau Gabriel in France is very different to the house in Paris, and it's very different to Marrakesh. And I think he clearly was a dreamer, and with a dreamer, a great reader. I mean, obviously Proust being his favorite author, but I think each and every one of these houses was kind of also like a mental journey and trip. It was a trip, and the interiors he did and the houses were almost like a fictional world that he created, probably, don't you think?
Totally. I love that expression. He said, I'm dreaming with my eyes open. Yeah. And I feel that when you hear that and you look at his interiors or you look at his prints, you do feel that you too are dreaming with your eyes open. And there's an amazing moment when Marguerite Duras, the French novelist, when she said, you know, the thing extraordinary about Saint Laurent is you go to a show and the dress you've never dreamed of is suddenly there. Yes. I mean, he just turn it all on for everyone. And I think that's what was he was such a sensualist. And yes, it was exotic, but it was also very erotic. He proved that you could be covered up, and it was incredibly sensual and erotic, and you know, it was all so tactile, and the colors, and that's that French expression, mettre en valeur, you know, the make flatter. He really did. I think he really dared women to wear color. And I feel there with the color, he had more of an Italian audience and an English audience, because I think both countries are more into color. Perhaps France has always been traditionally quite black, red, white, and blue.
But then he appealed to France as well with that, because of his tailoring and the blue blazer, the sailor look, the black, all the sort of the tuxedo and the black dress, but definitely, as you said, the seduction was always there. And even when he actually was the first one, and it's one of the two chapters you kind of wrote about in the book, but he was the first one to imagine a woman wearing a man's dress, a man's suit, and yet women would feel extremely sensual and feminine, and he was the first one to break that boundary.
And he certainly took a lot from Marlene Dietrich, and he was very into, but what was extraordinary is he brought it into high fashion.
Yeah.
And there's an incredible story. He loved Nan Kentner, the famous, you know, never too rich, never too thin couture client.
And you tell him the story of her when she walks into the restaurant in New York. Yeah.
I mean, it's an incredible, when you think that trousers were banned in certain restaurants in the 70s, in New York. I mean, now it just sort of seems extraordinary. And they said, I'm sorry, madam, trousers are banned. And she whipped off the trousers and showed these incredible, sensational legs. There she was in a jacket and her legs.
Yes.
But there's a very sweet story actually about Nan Kentner, which was they met when he was working at Christian Dior, and she was in floods of tears. She was very young. Both of them were very young, and she was in floods of tears because her mother would not let her buy some Christian Dior couture outfit. And that's how they met. I love this idea of her being in floods of tears, the drama. This is another thing. And you feel that with Yves, the drama,
yes,
colors. You
yes.
know, there's so much drama. You know, there's wonderful images you just showed of whatever, whether it was Russia or China or whatever.
Yep.
But just this high drama, and you get that he liked that and encouraged that. And here we have theatre and dance, and again those colours, incredible colours,
and this culture. I mean, this so many different interests in, you know, literature, culture, history, drama, theatre, ballet. I mean, it's just, that's why I think it's his world, and art, of course, but not only art in the sense of the artists you mentioned before, Matisse, we said Mondrian, of course, but it was also when he started discovering sort of African arts and shapes. And so I think, and then you see that again reflected in his interiors and his collections and the objects he would collect. And we'll see later some sort of, again, how Africa inspired his work. And, you know, some of, boots that would be clearly inspired with and by sort of Kuba cloths. And he wasn't even, I mean, he wasn't afraid of scandal. He wasn't afraid of, you know, being provocative in any way. And at various times, things that he did were considered kind of, as you said before, those were the times when, so he was really a groundbreaker, you know, over and over again. But I do think there's one thing, and I think we're getting there also with images, but I think his style, as you say, you kept saying, Natasha, everything, he would turn everything into Yves. I think a huge role is played by ornaments and accessories. And by that, I mean, obviously, in today's world, we refer to that, obviously, you know, their bags and shoes. And it was with him so much more than that. Mm. I mean, jewelry, we see here some wonderful examples of kind of floral bijou, but jewelry, I mean, that's a whole, you could have a whole museum and exhibitions just on his collections of bijou.
Absolutely. I mean, you see all these colors. Again, he was a great colorist, and also it wasn't, and that was the thing, he loved hats, but it wasn't the sort of cake, it was the cherry. You sense with him, it was the he lightly accented, you know, and you sense that with his interiors also. They were just sort of, he was seized, you sense this, you know, he bought that textile because he was just moved by it.
Yes.
And you see all these incredible strass and costume, you know, buttons. I mean, these are buttons, I think, right?
Yes, they are buttons. They are buttons. And
I mean,
yeah, they were all in the Musée Saint Laurent in Paris, but in what was his studio, which is obviously kind of staged today. But so Madison Cox, who made this book possible and allowed us to access his archives and you know, spend a whole morning with, you know, in the studio and looking at all these details. And as you say, you look at, I mean, these buttons were in a tray, but every single one, and as you said, again, it's the drama coming back, I think. I mean, it just everything. And, you know, I think that the long list of the accessories and ornaments he used, I mean, the belts he created, some of them being very simple, but in various different textures and textiles, and some others being again, a trip to Morocco, to India, to Russia with tassels and colors, and each and every one of them, for example, still today, you can wear them on anything, on jeans, on a black dress, on a vintage Saint Laurent dress, on a modern Saint Laurent dress, on Gucci. I mean, and I think so many of the current designers, you know, keep referring to him. I mean, the quotes are always there in any way. And the color combinations, I remember a few years ago with, for example, Valentino by Pierpaolo Piccioli, and there was this couture collection he did where it was all these clashes of different taffetas. And the first thing I thought, I looked at that and I thought, but this is Saint Laurent. He was so modern.
Yes, so modern and so daring.
Yeah.
But daring with, he dared with this sensational taste. And I think what was extraordinary about Saint Laurent, he was almost like 5 designers in one.
Yes.
Because it's all very well to be daring, but if you're only armed with talent, I mean, you're very talented, but he was armed with taste. And I think that was what's so extraordinary about Saint Laurent. It was almost, if he wanted to do, he pushed you to wear pink and green. He pushed you to wear black and brown, and you felt his confidence.
Yes. Yes. And you felt he wanted women to feel confident. And if we go back to the bags, which is one of my favorite pages in this book, first of all, because I think, I mean, if, you know, I would definitely want both of them and wear them every single day. But the story behind these is he, you know, at the time, all the designers were doing clutches for women, or women were wearing these kind of, you know, bags with sort of small handles. And so one of the hands was always busy with the bag. And he did these sort of hands-free bags, which at the time were, again, groundbreaking, because it was about freedom. It was about freedom for women to walk and do and have their hands free and be, you know, and I think, again, we give this for granted today. It's no news today. So, you know, you have so much of this everywhere. But at the time, to think about this was, I think, again, such a tribute to women and wanting women to feel confident. Yes.
And also it was just sort of, why shouldn't it be extremely pretty and practical?
Yeah.
I just think there was no question, again, during his heyday, that everything should be beautiful, that there was nothing was particularly silly.
Yeah.
You know, there was strength to the design, and you just feel that, as you've already mentioned, authentic. And I think when the designer is authentic to himself, which indeed he was, it just gives him this gift to do really what he wanted, whatever he wanted.
There's one more thing, Natasha, you write about in the book. It's one of the chapters in the book, for the N is nostalgia. And you refer to Saint Laurent as a Madeleine de Proust for so many women you talked to. I mean, that's what it is for me. That's my whole experience, is my mother only thinking about wearing Saint Laurent, thinking that, you know, and telling me, you know, that's all I feel good with is Saint Laurent. And then obviously, you know, Morocco and everything. But what do you think it is with Saint Laurent and his nostalgia for the past, yet becoming such a sort of modern designer and feeling so modern today? But you say something about, when you talk to Parisians about Saint Laurent, they kind of go, Yves. And it's like this nostalgia about that time, that world, what he represents. What is it?
I think he made, certainly in his heyday, he just knew what made women feel very good. He just, you know, whether it was the Abraham prints, or the colors, or the cut, he just had this extraordinary relationship with women.
Like an alchemist.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. I really think it was an alchemist. But he was the wizard, but you made it. But you made it. I mean, he used to say, "I'm nothing without my clients," and also his, you know, with those wonderful quotes. A woman just has to be in love, and anything she wears works. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that is, he understood. And I think there was this relationship. He was daring to have a relationship with every woman, and there was a freedom. There seemed to be a freedom, but as you've mentioned, there was this sensational cut, and he knew, you know, regarding the sleeves or regarding the length, the way the pants were cut or the way the jacket was cut. He knew what worked, and you know, it may look androgynous, but he wasn't scared of putting it, his famous smoking with a frilly shirt. Yes. You know, he never thought androgynous should be masculine.
Yes, yes. No, it was just another way for women to feel empowered and confident here. And I also want to add something about the kind of background for each page of the book, which we put so much attention into, and which makes it also feel cabana. But I do think for anyone in the interiors world, all of his carrés, all of his scarves, which, and a lot of these are scarves, some other are dresses in the background, but the patterns, the pattern design, both for couture and then for all the rive gauche, so the prêt-à-porter, the ready-to-wear, are heaven. Every single pattern he designed, whether it was geometrical, floral, he mixed sometimes in these scarves, he mixed, you know, floral in the middle and a beautiful geometric on the border with a sort of touch of gold. And so, you know, I think those are a real kind of inspiration for the interiors world as well.
Completely, and I love that in the book. I mean, you just, because you get, it illustrates what an extraordinary colorist he was, and that's actually quite rare. And you look at the wide range of colors he used, and it's incredibly inspiring. And I often, I mean, I think that Saint Laurent is one of those people who he certainly inspires you to have more color in your home.
Definitely, definitely. And that's why I wanted to approach Saint Laurent with Cabana, because it is about these beautiful patterns. It's about distant cultures. It's about the past. It's nostalgia. And he's just, you know, as you said, he's a master and has inspired and keeps inspiring. And I think will, you know, next generations to come, whether you are a fashion designer, an interior designer, or just, you know, someone who loves color and art. And I mean, look at this. This is in his, I think the last, because we don't have any time left, but look at how he would study color and more than study, just try color combinations. And it's extraordinary how, as you were saying before, some of these color combinations became a thing thanks to him.
Yes, and he loved it. He was trying it out, and then all these lovely, I don't know, the passementerie and the braiding, the edging. I mean, just the layering.
The tassels, the layering, exactly. So it's like, I think Saint Laurent is to fashion what you know, any layered interiors is to the design world, because it's, as you say, I mean, using the passementerie, which he clearly got from Morocco, because these you find in the souk today still, but it's like adding braids and borders to interiors, to a sofa, to a cushion, to curtains, and it's layer after layer and color clashes and boldness.
Yes, hugely bold.
Yeah,
and fun. I think that's also another thing, is you really sense, if you look at any photograph of Saint Laurent in one of his homes, you feel that he really had created his kingdom. And he encourages that with anyone, if it's their tiny room or huge room, that they have to feel at ease there.
Yes.
And that's certainly captured in your book.
The book.
That he looked incredible in his own homes.
Well, Natasha, thank you so much for your time and for contributing to this book. And thank you to everyone to the audience for listening, for bearing with us for half an hour. I think we could go on and on and on, but I'm afraid we have to stop for today. And thank you very much to the Chelsea Design Centre, London Design Week, and also to Rizzoli for making this book possible. And to Stefan, who maybe next time will join us for this conversation.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Natasha.
Martina. Thank
And
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.